gentlemen. This is
Ben.
show number 2. How's everyone doing?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing good.
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
I'm doing great. We've got some stuff to talk about tonight.
Yes, we do.
As opposed to last week when we
Wait,
didn't
no.
have
It
anything
was
to talk
just
about.
crickets.
Yes. No, we talked about stuff.
We did.
It was fun.
What do we have on tap?
Actually, we are going to go back to Thaddeus because he
Hello.
needs to finish up his Oscar predictions.
Well, not all the predictions.
Well, overview anyway. We're going to be
We're going to be here all night.
There's a lot of categories. We don't have enough time.
No, of course not. We'll cover Best Picture, I believe, is what we're going to finish up tonight.
Yeah, we'll do just a general recap since they're on their way coming up. So we've got The Artist, which is our lovely and charming black and white silent movie about making black and white silent movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm real surprised because, I mean, it's pretty ballsy to do something like this.
It is. It's a bit of a. It didn't get a huge wide release at first. It was sort of in the art house for a while, and the audience slowly grew. But yeah, it's a pretty bold move to make.
Now, who's in this film?
Nobody you've ever heard of.
Jean Dujardin. I think I'm close. I'm close.
That's close. That's in the ballpark. But yeah, it's sort of a nice up and comer from people you are unfamiliar with, just making a lovely little story.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't checked it out, all the nominations and everything have given it a big push at the theaters. So go check it out. It's definitely worth it. We got The Descendants, which has George Clooney as a frontrunner for Best Actor.
Right.
Won the Golden Globe for Best Dramatic Actor. That's, George Clooney is struggling to hold his family together amid some personal tragedy, which is that his wife in the film is in a coma. And characteristically, he apparently is not the one that normally deals with the kids, and so he's having to cope with that while also managing a big family land deal. And it's Alexander Payne who brought us Sideways, amongst several other excellent films. Excuse me. Mm-hmm. So check out The Descendants. In my opinion, it's got some pacing problems. It's not particularly fast moving, but the story is off the beaten path a little bit, but accessible, with a lot of heart to it. If nothing else, go watch it because George Clooney's gonna have to give an Oscar speech, and you might want to know what he's talking about. We've got Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, which is the polarizing film set, in and around and a little bit after September 11th, 2001, starring Tom Hanks and Sandra Bullock, who are only out to make us cry. Pretty much. That's their MO these days. Anyway, polarizing film. There's a lot of you out there who aren't going to be interested in seeing it for it's still being too close to that time, and a lot of the true memories it evokes. And there's a lot of other people out there who it really is trying to get at the heart of something that is universal, which is dealing with loss, dealing with love of family, and trying to cope with those things,
which we touched on last week.
Yeah, exactly. Then we've got The Help, based on the best-selling novel. Starring Bryce Dallas Howard, Emma Stone, and Viola Davis, so on and so forth. Good movie. Not definitely deserves a nomination. Go check it out. It's set in the South in the 60s, specifically in Jackson, Mississippi. Emma Stone, aspiring journalist, trying to be an aspiring author, and working in the segregated South with some of the household help, as it were, to tell their side of the story. We've got Hugo, which is Martin Scorsese's film based on the best-selling young adult children's book. Very charming, very wonderful. Go see it. Midnight in Paris is Woody Allen's offering.
This is a good place. No, I just go see it. Just
go see it. Martin Scorsese makes a giant epic based on an epic. Really, are you not going to go see?
It's a gorgeous movie.
Are you not going to go see a Martin Scorsese film? Do I really need to explain more than
right?
Woody Allen's Midnight in Paris with Owen Wilson and Rachel McAdams. It's Woody Allen's kind of open love letter to Paris back in the 1920s. Literally, Owen Wilson hails a cab that magically transports him back to the 1920s while he's in Paris. So it's a charming little story.
Good flick.
We got Moneyball, which has Brad Pitt, Jonah Hill, pinned in part by Academy Award winner Aaron Sorkin. That's about Brad Pitt as the general manager of the Oakland A's back in 2001, taking a different approach to baseball, almost more like picking stocks rather than picking players based on specific athletic ability, and trying to change the game from that point. It's got some wonderful undertones that have to do with recognizing that it is just a game and that there are more important things to life. So definitely go check that one out. Tree of Life. It's Terrence Malick, Texas's own Terrence Malick, which is your higher brow. The dude taught philosophy in Paris for like 30 years of his life, in between making things like Days of Heaven and The Thin Red Line. So that's going to be visually spectacular. If you're looking for some eye candy, check it out. But it will make you think, not a ton of dialogue. And it's Sean Penn sort of contemplates his life and the effect and contrast of the way his parents raised him. Also with Brad Pitt, actually, is the sternly disciplined, unyielding, expectation-having father versus their loving and nurturing mother. And then Warhorse, Steven Spielberg rides again. The World War I epic,
Waka Waka.
Essentially told through the eyes of a horse. And it's essentially it's somewhere between Forrest Gump and but told through the eyes of a horse, as we mentioned last time. So I think you boys have any opinions about your front-running favorites?
I think The Artist is going to take it.
Really?
I think it's a great film. It's very experimental and just a beautiful product came out of that. I got to go with that. It's not like anything that I've seen this year.
Very cool. Joe's going with The Artist. Ben?
Depending upon just sheer curiosity about the films, this Midnight in Paris actually sounds really cool.
It's a cool movie.
I'm kind of into that whole time travel, sci-fi love story thing.
Sort of. It's a little bit more magical than sci-fi.
Fine.
It's
Don't
not
make
to
it
rain
as
on your
cool
parade.
now.
No,
Whatever.
it's all good.
All right.
I'm gonna specifically hold off until we do an actual. We'll do a more full-ranging Oscar prediction show. So
I have time to change my mind.
You do have time
there
to
you
change
go.
your
There
mind.
you go.
But I am writing you down for The Artist. Joe picks.
Oh no, nice. All
The
right,
Artist.
next up on the Nerd Show, we will be discussing, of course, the big, huge Watchmen news that came out this week. We will be touching on that next segment. Coming up further on, we've got Keith from Keith's Comics. We're going to be discussing this new digital day and date.
Good time.
Yeah.
So listen. You're listening to the Nerd Show here on 1190 AM. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. It's the Nerd Show, streaming live at DFW1190am.com.
There you go, Joe. Hello.
Did you two get your doctorate when you were 13?
No.
In medicine?
No, of course not.
No, sir. You know me.
I wouldn't trust you with a scalpel.
No.
And I got nothing.
And
I
you
got
shouldn't. No, exactly.
nothing.
There's nowhere to go. Okay,
it's
so you're
all right.
listening to The Nerd Show on 1190 AM.
Welcome back.
We are talking about the big news that was announced Wednesday that DC is actually going to be tackling some prequels for Watchmen. And Joe, what are your initial thoughts on that?
Well, I've shared my initial thoughts very loud and clear, both with you and online. I think it's the most ridiculous idea in the world, and a few people have pointed out, like, hey, it's not that ridiculous. It's not like DC came up with this idea. Alan Moore had this idea. No. Just like how George Lucas had the idea for the prequels, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, and this is another prime example. The point of Watchmen was a parody. It was a social statement based on absolute power and what you do to create that utopia and the dangers of said utopia. Watchmen told the story it needed to tell. The backstory of these characters isn't important. The message is what was important. And now creating some kind of backstory, some kind of prequel, to make a big deal as well of prequelizing this story, you're missing the point entirely. And it's just, if you're going for some cash grab, be a little bit smarter about it. Even if you are going for some pointless cash grab on something like this, why not release it when the movie was coming out and awareness of Watchmen was high. Now you come out with it now, and people, comic fans, they're going to know about it, but just movie-going audiences and casual comic book fans are going to be like, oh, Watchmen, yeah, that thing that came out that Zack Snyder did.
I mean, the largest decision here is the reason why the movie hasn't been, the book hasn't been touched in 25 years. And of course, that's, there's a business side to it, and of course, there's the artistic side to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it was in the late 80s, Alan Moore had a really big falling out with
Everybody.
DC.
With everybody.
With
everyone he knew.
Yes.
I mean, Watchmen was in they were in litigation to make Watchmen for all that time.
All that time, yeah.
They've been trying to plan making that movie for a long time. Yeah. And do I like the Zack Snyder version? Yeah. I thought it was pretty serviceable as a film version of the book. It's hard to make a faithful movie of that story.
Really?
And I thought he did a pretty good job of it.
A good interpretation.
Yeah, I was going to say it's purists complain about the subtle change that has to do with the ending, so we won't get into the details. But I think it's a very workable, very serviceable ending that makes sense in context without having to go into some of the other details that you kind of have to bypass a little bit to get there. And it still makes perfect sense. It still achieves the same end. So I was a little disappointed in the movie just by way of being too familiar with the story. So it's almost like hearing it for the 100th time, only this time I'm seeing it, and it's kind of like, okay.
Well, but that's the problem that you run into when you make a movie based on a comic.
Exactly.
You're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Exactly.
And I think as far as being as faithful as you could be to the visuals of the book, I think he did a really good job.
No, and that's the thing is Zack Snyder did an amazing job making the film. I think it is a great movie for what it is, and in the way that it was faithful. It's just as a movie-going audience member who's just kind of like, oh, I probably shouldn't have watched this because I've already seen it 100 times, and it's it is what it is. But the interesting thing about this new release, this prequel thing, and Alan Moore's falling out is he has nothing to do with these prequels,
not whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, they're putting out 7 books. I mean, they're putting out a 4-issue Rorschach, a 6-issue Minutemen, 6-issue Comedian, 4-issue Dr. Manhattan, 4-issue Night Owl, 6-issue
Ozymandias.
Thank you. And then a 4-issue Silk Spectre. I mean, you've got Darwin Cook working on these things. You got J. Michael Straczynski. You've got Len Wein, who was the original editor.
Len Wein created Wolverine.
Yep, there you go.
He's been in comics for a long time.
Yep, he's good stuff.
Now, if you were going to prequelize this, if you were going at all to tell any story about these characters in this universe, I think making one about the Minutemen and Rorschach and Night Owl, for that matter, because they were part of that group at one point.
Yeah,
that makes sense, but it's still unnecessary. As far as the overall arc of the book, like I said before, you've told the story that you needed to tell. You made the point you needed to make.
I agree with that. I agree that it is superfluous, but at the same time, I can see that. I can see as a fan of other stories and other things, wanting that element of more. Just like I'd like to see a little bit more. I wish I could dig deeper into this stuff, and this is sort of an outlet for those fans, at least in that way, in my opinion.
But these characters were already they're a parody of characters that already existed. If you want to know the history of like Ozymandias, read Superman. You know, that's for the most part, that's what these characters, they're all modeled after a character that was popular at the time. And it's almost kind of like a dark version of like what would happen to the Justice League if, they solved all the crimes, beat all the bad guys, and there was no more threat. What would happen? How would they keep their control? How would they keep watching, And that's what happens. It's this dark future. So if you want to know the makings, the beginnings of it, pick up another comic. Pick up Straczynski's Superman. You're pretty much going to get the same thing.
Well, I mean, going back to Alan Moore, I mean, he said this latest decision by DC Comics is completely shameless, which is, I put in quotes. He says, I tend to take this latest development as a kind of eager confirmation they are still apparently dependent upon ideas that I had 25 years ago. That's taken from a New York Times piece. And yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree, especially with what's happened over the past 6 months with DC Comics. I mean, I see, personally, this is my own opinion, the relaunch of the DC universe is a publicity stunt.
The New 52?
Right, which is made completely, almost completely out of desperation.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read Green Lantern, and they're keeping some things and not keeping others, and it's, oh, hello, I'm the Martian Manhunter, but we just fought the Sinestro Corps War. I'm like, you can't cherry pick what you want to keep in your universe.
God, I wish you said that to Jeff Johns when you interviewed him.
I have.
You said it was, yes,
There wasn't
Mr.
enough
Johns. I
time.
agree,
Well,
Mr. Johns.
that
I'm
was,
your biggest fan.
excuse me. I have not read any of his. By the time we had that interview, I did not read any of his comics. I didn't know what the vibe was.
Nothing but journalistic integrity on the
That's
show.
right. That's right.
Sight unseen.
Oh, he goes back. He would try to make a legal battle out of this, but he doesn't want to because it would just drag out in the court, and it's easier just to kind of let it go. He says, "I don't want the money, but what I want is for this not to happen."
Yeah.
Well, he's got his money, and at least he's being relatively realistic about his expectations. Like, why, other than just being a news? I mean, Alan Moore is an incredibly brilliant man. Why drag it to court? Why go through all that? Like, you're not really going to stop it from happening.
Right.
Or, like, it will happen, and then you'd have to retract it all, and it'd be, like, a whole... So at least he realizes, like, the thing that I want is sort of unattainable, and, I'm not after money, so there's no reason to go after it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So I at least respect his approach, and at least he's coming out and he's like, look, here, people are going to want to know my opinion.
Right.
Here's what it is.
He's
it's
also kind of nuts. Alan Moore's pretty nuts.
Well,
like,
yeah,
if you
I mean,
read
that's
his
where
rants and
the-
stuff, you're like, wow.
That's-
you
where
agree
some of the
up to
brilliance
him.
come.
You
Yeah.
agreed with him up to a certain point,
Yeah.
and then of course
Yeah.
he goes and says, "As far as I know, there weren't any prequels or sequels to Moby Dick." And I'm like, dude, you don't have to, hit the
Right.
nail on the head or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
Well, for
back
some-
off when you're doing something good here, okay?
Well, no. I mean,
I would compare
I would
Watchmen
agree.
to Moby Dick as far as mediums, not quality of writing.
Yeah.
Right.
But I would say, for as influential as Moby Dick was to literature,
Right.
Watchmen was that influential to
Oh
comics.
no, yeah, I'm
Oh,
not.
yeah.
I'm not. I'm not.
Oh, it's okay. I didn't write it. You don't have to get defensive.
thank
it's
you.
all good.
I'm.
Ben's
It's not
getting this
Joe's
defensive
quote,
stance.
no.
Like, no. What I mean is,
It's like, calm down, Joe. Yeah, calm down.
Put the knife away,
but
Joe.
Alan
Put the
Moore
knife away.
is a nut, and I think there's a part of him that
Right.
knows that if he took it to court, no one would take him seriously. I mean, this is a guy who goes from writing very intelligent literature to, you would swear that he keeps jars of urine in his refrigerator.
And he might. Who
That's
knows?
something I would still believe too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
He's just like when in Dead Poet Society, when Robin Williams gets Ethan Hawke to start just saying creative stuff, and he says "sweaty tooth madman." That's Alan Moore. That's when I think "sweaty tooth madman." That's Alan Moore.
Well, on a little bit on the other side of that, Mr. Dave Gibbons, of course, we all know he drew Watchmen as well. I think, did he co-write as well?
Co-writer,
Co-writer
artist.
some of it. I mean,
Yeah.
he took a little bit more of a hands-off, more of a diplomatic approach. The original series of Watchmen is the complete story that Alan Moore and I wanted to tell. However, I appreciate DC's reasons for this initiative, and they wish all the artists and writers involved to pay a tribute, blah, 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 whatever.
Dave Gibbons. We told the story we wanted to tell, but please keep hiring me to draw stuff.
Oh, there you go, yeah.
I don't want to burn any
He's like,
bridges.
yeah, keep giving me
I
money.
love everybody.
I don't
That'd be
get that
good.
Alan Moore money.
Pay
So.
Yeah.
me, but yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. I mean, Alan Moore has his money, and he kind of walked away when he walked away, and
Yeah.
and he's doing
Well,
his thing. He's,
through his eyes, he was technically screwed.
Well, yeah.
Wow, such
through
language
contracts.
this week,
I
Ben.
know. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Well,
my.
they
bringing
did
the
mess
hate.
up when it came to League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. They messed that up big time.
Yeah.
And I can understand him being very, very, very gun shy when it comes to them taking his property and making movies out of it.
Certainly.
Oh, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yeah.
Why did
But the
that happen?
Wachowskis did a good job with V for Vendetta, I thought. You
Yeah.
know, it was pretty true to the book. It was a pretty good film. I'm not a huge fan of all the Wachowskis' visuals, though. But
No,
again,
well, and that was, yeah. I'm not even going to get into that one. That's just
It's very painful, isn't that?
yeah, a little bit. It's just kind of.
It was such a great idea, and then when I saw the movie, I'm like,
Well, they
Really?
get. I mean, I understand how it is. Again, it's one of those. It is faithful to the book, but at the same time, it's just kind of like those aspects of that book are kind of heavy-handed with the militant, fascism and
I
things.
agree.
It's kind of like.
I can
okay.
agree with that.
Yeah. So I mean but that's just personal tastes and preferences. So
hey, I've got some news. Not to completely throw this into a
What's
different
that?
direction,
What's that?
but we're going to be at the Sci-Fi Expo next weekend.
excellent.
Yes, we're going to go on a road trip.
That's 2 blocks away.
2 blocks away.
Sweet.
No, yeah, it'll be down at the Irving Convention Center. We're going to have a booth there, so come by, check us out. I wanted to mention this before we went to break.
I'm going to do some drawings.
Yes. Oh, you will.
Yes.
Sweet. I have 2.
I'll do some drawings for you.
Oh, that'll be fantastic.
I'll sign pieces of paper with my name on it. That's about as talented as I get.
All right, cool. Yeah, we'll be down there. You're listening to The Nerd Show here on 1190 AM. Coming up next, we're going to have Keith from Keith's Comics on. We're going to be talking about this new digital comics age and how it'll go over the next 10 years or so. So,
are we listening to The Nerd Show, Ben?
Thank you.
Excellent.
I'm so tongue-tied tonight.
It
Thank
happens.
you. Alrighty.
You're listening to The Nerd Show on 1190 AM.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Go, Joe.
Go, Jay. Must have moved, Joe. Wow.
If only you could see Joe's dancing on the radio.
Yeah!
Greatness. You're listening to The Nerd Show here on 1190 AM. You can contact us through Twitter and Facebook. Joe, how do they get a hold of us on Twitter?
Well, if you're on Twitter, it's at The Nerd Show. I'm on this thing. I'm writing stuff about how I'm getting actors' names correct and responding to you on Twitter. We've also got our Facebook.
Yes, I'm on Facebook right now. I did post that we're online. And
exciting times.
Yes,
it's
it is.
the little things.
It's the little things. If you got a comment, post there on Facebook. It's facebook.com, keyword The Nerd Show. You can check out our website at thenerdshowonline.com. You can check out previous shows, previous segments, and you can contact us directly.
All kinds of awesomeness.
Indeed.
We will answer your questions.
Now,
they may or may not be correct answers.
That's right.
But we'll answer.
That's right. That's right. Right or wrong, we will answer you. Now, we do have on the line Keith from Keith's Comics. We will be discussing this digital day and date where they're putting comic books online now for people to read and how it's impacting comic book retailers around the country and, of course, here in town. Keith, how's it going?
Hey, it's going great. Glad to be on with you.
Thank you, sir. And, well, the first question I have is the DC is actually, working with you guys a little bit through this comicology. I mean, can you explain exactly what that is?
Well, sure. The DC Comics has stepped out there. For the last 20 years or so that I've been involved in comics, they've been really helpful to the direct market retailer like myself, and they made sure that we could be part of the community on this. Pardon me. And what they've done is they've set it up so that you can buy your digital comics through Comixology, but you can also make sure that you're supporting your local comic shop. So if you go to a shop like mine at keithcomics.com, you can see a portal there where you click through, and it's just like when you buy a book on Amazon and somebody gets a piece of the pie. Well, when you buy a comic digitally through Comixology and you've gone through my portal, well, a little bit comes back locally to Keith's Comics, and that way, we get to help make their digital business a little bit better, more robust.
Now,
and a little bit comes back to us.
Right, right.
Supporting the local guy.
It's cool. Yeah, you're
that's
right.
awesome.
You're right. It puts a local face on what could cut out the middleman completely. Which, I don't know. The digital day and date thing, I mean, I see how it's good for business, but I'm so much more of a collector guy. Like, I need to have that thing in my hands.
Yeah,
I love the smell of the pages.
I'm kind of split because I'm mostly that's my history is I've gotta have these are my bookshelves and these are the things that are on them.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to have it there. But on the other hand, it's I see the benefit and I'm starting to in certain areas try and just like I don't have a billion CDs anymore. I've just I've got my iPod and my my hard drives and
which
whatnot.
says a lot for this. I mean, and I'm sure Keith can attest. It's probably a good space saver for people who want to read and collect those comics, and they're not taking up space on the shelves anymore.
Digital ones and zeros take up a lot less space than long boxes of comics. That's for sure.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, do you feel that that you're having to expand beyond comic books? Of course, I know that you collect toys and you collect games as well. Do you see the landscape changing in 5 or 10 years?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Because no one at DC or Marvel Comics or any of the big players are going to keep their job very long if they say to their boss, "Well, I don't think this digital thing is going to work out."
Right.
Right.
So it's coming down the road. It's technology. It's moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
You can be part of it. You can harness it, or you can get run over by it.
So what you're saying is the internet is not going away. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think they may have something there.
Okay. All right. I'm going to make a note of that.
I think that we have an advantage over the TV, music, movies. I think is that you guys have already hit on it. There's a tactile experience. There's a collector's mentality that's not available, and I think that there's going to be room for stores like mine for a good long time. But I think that you're going to see a really divergence. There's room in the marketplace for lots of different kind of stores. And my hope is, and I see some evidence of this, is that a few of our customers are going to move to digital for space reasons, where they just like the convenience of it, they like the cost of it, they like the product better. Mm-hmm. But because of the penetration out in the bigger world, more people are going to be exposed to comics, and that drives them back. So my hope is, and I see a little bit of this, is that, we'll lose some, but I think the bigger pool of people that are exposed to comics brings more customers into our stores.
And I think a big part of that also is for the stores to have a personality of their own. And if you've been to Keith's Comics, which I was just there a couple weeks ago, I'm rehearsing a show right next door, so I bought a couple of Han Solo ice trays. Nice. And they're awesome. But you go in and the store's got such a personality and, really fun, helpful staff and stuff. And so it's fun to go in there. You like to go in, you like to spend time, you like to, chat it up a little bit with Keith or whoever's working there at the time. There's not going to be any, I feel like there won't be any danger for the shops, as long as they're adapting to the times, the digital age. Plus, they still have the items in shop, but they've also got that personality, and as they said in Pulp Fiction, personality goes a long way.
It's true.
Well, you're very kind about that, and you're exactly right. That you can't create a community, well, then there really isn't nothing to sell there, because they can buy comics anywhere they want to now.
Right.
You got to give them a reason to come in. And a long time ago, we stopped competing on price because you just can't stay in business being the cheaper guy.
Right.
And so we have to give people a reason to come. It's going to be the same thing with digital. I think that you're going to see, as things shake out, even there's a possibility they might not even have a need for like a comicsology whenever the big companies figure out how to deliver directly. But you're still going to have a need for community, and that's a tastemaker way to deliver it. And you're going to see that, at least in the early stages, DC Comics specifically have said, hey, we've got these people here who love our product. They know how to sell it. They know how to upsell it. Why in the world would we cut them out?
Right.
Because even if we went to all digital, we would need tastemakers and people who know how to sell our stuff. And that's it's already in there. And oh my gosh, I worry about this all the time, is because DC Comics is just a little hub inside of this giant wheel, and at any time some gigantic upper level vice president could say, you know what, let's save the money from printing all these comics and go all digital.
Right.
And I'm just hoping that 70 years of historical printing and building community and building mythos keeps that from happening anytime soon.
Well, that wouldn't be any fun.
No.
And I mean, it's. I also think it's different. Well, luckily, we've had digital books for a while now, and their publishers still print books, literature, and that's not really going away. And you still have brick and mortar bookstores and things like that. And it's I do appreciate that sense of community. And even though you can go to some place like Amazon, say, and buy Moby Dick, it's not the same as if you go and the guy at the local comic book shop and you're like, well, what about this new series of or what's something that I like these things. People you can trust to make relevant suggestions rather than random username suggestions.
Or even beyond the suggestions, just being able to go and buy something and have, someone like Keith who, either spots my tat or sees what I'm buying and it's like, hey, there's this other thing going on that's relevant to what it is you're buying. What do you think about that? Like he's, taking a little interest in what it is that, whether he genuinely cares about what you like or not, he's at least taking the time and making you feel comfortable. Now, I got to tell you, my experience with Keith actually started before I ever walked into the store. Keith, I hate to derail this, but I got to ask you. I'm playing on Xbox one day. I download this game called Comic Jumper, and there's Keith at the very beginning of the game. He's answering the phone. Keith's Comics. No, we don't have that. How did that get started?
Oh, it was just part of our community. Someone says they want to film something in our store. I say when. Somebody wants to take pictures, I say, well, where do you want me to stand? So they had worked on this game, as I understand it, and they had sublet out the cut scenes to a local company. And I'm embarrassed. I don't remember their name offhand. They were great guys. But they wander in and they say, we're trying to do this, this, and this. What do you got for ideas? And we need to shoot it tomorrow. And I'm like, well, it seems like we could set it up here, here, and here, and you can do it as long as I can be in it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, okay.
Yeah.
So they come in the next day, and they take about 2 or 3 hours, maybe not even that long. We shoot a whole bunch of stuff. We used some. We didn't use other things. I ad-libbed, and I'm famously known as One Take Keith.
Nice.
And they took it back to their people. They loved it, and several months later it comes out. And it's always fun to have my little slice of celebrity. Like this week someone came in and said, hey, aren't you the guy from Comic Jumper? Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, didn't I see you did a variant cover on Godzilla?
Oh, yeah, that was a lot of fun, too.
I actually have that issue. I need to come by and get you to sign it.
Absolutely, I would love to do it. And I'll even have Godzilla say something on the cover.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, we appreciate you joining us, Keith. Of course, that's Keith's Comics down off of Mockingbird and Greenville Avenue there in Dallas, just a little bit east of 75. Thank you again for joining us, Keith, and we'll be in touch.
You're welcome. Call me anytime.
All right,
You
thank
got
you,
it.
sir.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
All right, and let's see. You're listening to the Nerd Show here on 1190. That was great, man.
That was good. Good
fun.
work,
That was
Keith.
awesome. Thank
Well
you,
done.
sir.
Well played.
Appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. Well, when we come back, we'll open up the phone lines. See what you guys. We've got just a few of them open still.
Which means we're gonna have our producer Jeff acting like 8 different people. Calling
That's
us
right.
up.
That's right. You
all
get
good.
those
How do they call
callers
us?
in line there, Jeff.
All right, what's the phone number, Ben?
That's going to be area code 214-817-787-1190. Don't laugh. Why are you laughing?
His life is good.
That was
It is.
evil.
It was.
That was evil. You're listening to the Nerd Show. We'll be right back.
Welcome back. It's the Nerd Show on 1190 AM.
You're off the case. You're out of control, Callahan.
Is Law and Order a nerd thing? Is that
It could be.
specifically? Okay.
It could be.
Kevin Smith was on an episode.
Oh, then it has
There
to
you
be.
go.
There
There's
you
the
go.
connection.
Yes.
There it is right
He
there.
wanted to be the guy who was the guy that led them to the guy.
So
That's literally what he has been quoted as saying. He's like, you want to be on the show? He's like, yeah, no, I want to be the guy that leads them to the guy that knows about the thing.
I've watched way too much SVU. I'm like, ooh, that's not nerdy at all. That's just dirty.
No, nice.
That's tough.
You're listening to the Nerd Show here on 1190 AM.
Nerds!
Thank you. We've got Twitter up. We got Facebook up. You can give us a call. We have just a few lines open.
What's the phone number?
Area code 214-787-1190.
Cool.
Just a few.
Any day now.
As we
Anytime.
watch,
Any
are we
questions?
looking at the please call?
No, I wanted to touch on
So-
comic book shops. They're very
Square.
No, thank you. No,
well lit.
Go ahead. I'm
To
sorry.
prevent
We're messing
theft.
with
this
you.
is
it's
not
okay.
a guessing
Go
game
ahead.
here. Okay,
Go ahead and finish your thought.
It's a very personal thing. Your comic book shop. At least this is my own experience. I mean, you form a bond with the comic book shop owner, and you're like, you discuss things,
Yeah.
having to do with the comics that you're reading. You know, I
Yes.
find it a very good experience.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you go into business with them,
Yes,
then it can get a little rough.
get a little rough. That's right.
Joe has some stories.
Yeah, but
we don't
it
have
has
time for them
nothing
now.
to do.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with product distribution or anything like that.
right.
You know,
No.
it's something else completely. It
Indeed.
was-
But I would say some of that, at least for my personal experience as a kid, before you've got your driver's license and whatnot, you're either walking.
oh, when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're either walking or you're before you're stealing your parents' car. Don't do it, kids. You're either walking or riding your bike, and that was the thing. So it's like I didn't have a billion comic book outlets as a kid. I had I could ride across this very large sort of city park to get to mine. I would hang out there with my buddies all the time, and
Well, and again too, you're only on a limited budget.
that as well.
You've only
Yeah.
got back then it was what, a $2 comic, $1.50,
What?
$2 comic.
I was buying comics when they were like 50-cent cover prices and stuff.
See, that just shows how old you are, Joe.
It does,
There you
but
go.
I'm
Well,
also
no,
awesome.
I mean, there were still. Yeah, there
I
you
mean,
go.
do you buy the comics that you want, or do you buy the value pack that has 3 in a package with the middle one? You can't see what it
you
is.
Get the ones that you want.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Always.
Mm-hmm. Well, whenever they do the value packs too, usually they're packaged a little carelessly
Yeah.
and bent. And that's one thing that'll get me, man. If a spine is bent, I'm not buying it.
Yep. Or the the colors don't pop, or the colors faded,
Right.
or if it's just an Archie comic.
But you were hitting on something very interesting there. When you're a kid and you have very few places where you can go.
Really?
For me, yeah, we had like an arcade within biking distance.
Right.
We would go to like the local convenience store and just buy some, soda and candy and stuff. If I wanted to go to the comic book shop, which they had comics on the rack there at the convenience store,
right.
But if I wanted to go to a comic shop, Dad had to drive me, and we went every week, and
nice.
That's cool.
It was like, all right, what do we want to get? Well, my father was the one that originally got me into comics. He gave me his reprint of Action Comics #1, and
nice.
That was my first comic book, and then the very first one I bought on my own was a Fantastic Four one. And that's pretty much what set me down the path. Then I found out, like, my best friend who lived next door, his older brother collected comics. And so I started kind of hanging out with him more than I hung out with my friend. And he taught me all about these, the Marvel comics. I only knew about Superman and Batman. I didn't know, like, Spider-Man's part of this whole other company. And that's when I discovered the X-Men and Wolverine.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, whoa, like, good guys aren't always good. Like, there's a gray area.
There's black hat.
I love
guys.
this guy. Yeah, I feel like an outcast too. When I'm at school and stuff, I'm picked on. This Wolverine guy's kind of like that. I love this, and kind of got this connection, and it just got my passion for comics burning. And
nice.
And yeah. Dad used to take me all the time. That was something that we bonded on. It was amazing. We went so much that they would invite us to like comic exclusive events.
Oh, that's awesome.
One of them was a screening of a documentary called Comic Book Confidential.
Nice.
And Stan Lee was doing a Q&A. And I begged my father, please, let's go to this thing. They were doing it at the Kodak Theater. And so he's like, all right, we'll go. And it was a snowstorm out, ice on the roads. We get in the car, and he's, I don't want to, blah, 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 just cursing to himself. We get in the car, and we start driving off. First turn we hit, the car slides, and we almost go off the road. And he's like, we're not doing this. Forget this. I'm taking you home. And I'm like, oh, my heart's broken. But I was like, all right, I get it. It's not safe. He keeps driving. And I'm scared to even mention anything because I'm like, maybe he forgot we were going home.
This isn't the way home.
And I don't want him to remember. And so we finally get to the Kodak Theater. We see this movie, and it's this documentary about comics. It's really fascinating, kind of boring, but fascinating. Meanwhile, I'm totally into it, but the theater is filled with the sound of my father sleeping right next to me the whole time, snoring.
No.
But then the movie ends, and we did the Q&A with Stan Lee, and I didn't know who Stan Lee was. I just knew his name was in all my comics.
Right.
Had him sign a copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which ended up getting stolen by a former roommate like 15, 16 years later.
That sucks.
But I got it replaced last year. But that's kind of, the origins of my passion with comics. But yeah, it's one of those few things that's accessible that you can do when you're a kid.
Do you still remember the name of your first comic shop?
Empire Comics.
There you go.
Off of Stone Road in
Nice.
Rochester, New York.
What was yours, Thaddeus?
I sadly can't remember. The name changed somewhere after elementary school, and I can't remember. I don't remember the story as to why and things like that. So I couldn't tell you. It was in Overland Park, Kansas.
Nice.
So good luck.
This shop was rough, man. The guy who worked behind the counter smoked. Like seriously, just
just
smoked
while he
in
was
a
there.
building full of flammable paper, just smoking behind the counter. Every time you bought a comic that wasn't bagged or boarded, it smelled like smoke. I didn't get that awesome new comic book smell until I moved here to Texas and went to a couple of comic shops here and finally got to really experience that.
Why don't
this
these
is
comics
great.
smell like cigarettes? This is weird.
You really needed your fix back then.
Yeah.
Like I got to get the nicotine off the page.
Right?
Wow.
What about
You just
Ben?
moved to Texas just so you could read them through the
so I can get
smoke.
Actually, it was a couple of years before I found a comic shop here, and my father would still go to Empire Comics and buy all the new releases that I wanted to read. And at the end of because, all right, getting a little personal, my folks divorced and my mother remarried, and that's why we moved to Texas. My father still lived in New York. He would buy my comics for me, and at the end of every month, I would get this huge crate of a box with all of my comics for that month, and I would just go through.
Wow.
It was like Christmas every month.
Don't talk to
That
me for the
is-
rest of the afternoon.
Right.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
Dad was really
That's
into that,
cool,
and that's
man.
why I got into like literature and reading and writing,
Right.
because I was so into reading comics, and I think that's kind of important. There's a lot of, even with my little sister growing up, like she really wasn't a big fan of reading. And I always thought, wow, you just got to try to find that one thing that she'd be interested in, and I guess for me, I lucked out with comics. I just ignited a burning passion for the written word.
There you go. Well, if anybody else has an early comic book story or their favorite comic book, or even if you remember your first comic book and how you got into it, please tell us about it. Give us a call.
Email us. Write us.
Send us a tweet of all 160 characters of iHeart Comics because.
For me, I was a supermarket kid. I would go to the supermarket and I get them over near the pharmacy section.
There you go.
Yeah. And first of all, I began reading my brother's comics, and of course, we didn't take care of them. They were thoroughly read. And
that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. I mean, it's not like looking back on now, all those comics, they didn't get any kind of value whatsoever.
There's tons of, if you're out there and you've got like the pristine collection, and you're like, this is how I'm going to pay for college or a car, just let it get treat things nicely because you want to have nice things, but don't bend over backwards to keep everything in super extra pristine because it's really just not gonna happen. For most of it, not everything. It's speculating on anything else. So that's just my advice. Do it if you're into it. Get into it. Read them cover to cover.
We're about to go to war.
Yeah,
me and Thaddeus are about to go to war. I'm like, you don't bend the spines.
Don't bend the spines. I'm saying. Treat them nicely so that you can have nice things.
Say don't bend the spines.
Don't bend the spines.
Thank you.
Whatever you do, don't bend the spines.
Unless you're
fighting Zool, and you have to choose a destroyer. Anybody who gets that reference.
Well, never mind. It's no point anymore. My story didn't go anywhere.
You were a supermarket kid.
That's right.
I was
in
the pharmacy.
Supermarket, yes. And
reading your brother's comics.
My first comic that I got and I started reading a story arc was Spider-Man Maximum Carnage.
Wow.
And,
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it was an ongoing thing where I, hey, Mom and Dad, this is a comic, and, can you get it for me?
And your dad was like, no.
Well, no, he was...
Keep the pressure on.
He was like, I wish we need Ben to read. That's good. So that was like, something he enjoys, and it's only a couple bucks. So
there you go.
That's my general feeling that I thought. It was great. It was great.
Mine was... It was X-Men Ultra series, the part of the Bishop's Crossing series, and it was honestly it was a birthday present.
Mm-hmm.
A handful of them from just my buddies back in 4th or 5th grade.
Cool.
You guys are so young. You guys are so young.
Whatever.
No, it happens.
How old are you, Joe?
I'm 34 years old. I'm like, I really liked the original Frank Miller Wolverine miniseries that came out in 1983, 84. That was my thing. You guys are talking about stuff that happened
in
almost
the 90s.
15 years later.
Oh.
You're welcome. We're here to keep you young, Joe.
That's right. That's right. All right. You've been listening to The Nerd Show. We are going to be over at the Sci-Fi Expo next weekend.
Yes.
We're going to have a table there. So
I'm going to draw stuff.
He's going to draw stuff.
I'm going to sign things.
You can sign my drawings.
I can.
And I'm going to keep from going crazy.
There you go.
And I'm going to stalk Eliza Dushku. You hear me, Eliza?
No, not this time.
I'm
Again?
going.
Not this. No.
I've got the white van rented.
Does she have?
Why are you doing this?
Because it has power outlets, and we can play Nintendo in the van.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Wait, doesn't she have a restraining order?
No, don't
remind me.
Don't lure her with that, okay?
With the restraining order?
No, with the white van.
Guess what
all right,
had.
you've been listening to The Nerd Show here on 1190 AM. We will talk to you all next week.
Send us your questions. Tell us your stories.
That kind of stuff. All right.
We love you.
Later, guys.
Bye.
Have a good week.
The Nerd Show is a production of Nerdville Entertainment.